Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. I'm very excited about this video today. This video is one of my favorite tropes to read and I read it all of the time, and I also am doing this in collaboration with Jess from Peace Love Books. I reached out to her and asked if she wanted to do a video like this with me and she said yes. So her video is up if you want to go watch that. You've probably already seen it if you're watching this one, or anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. I have 10 books here that are the perfect blend of Rakes and Wallflowers. Some of them are both of those together in their romantic relationship. Some of them are just Rakes, maybe in a lady, and some of them are just Wallflowers. So here we go. Okay, so one of the first books that I want to talk about is actually what inspired me to make this, and it is The Lady Gets Lucky by Joanna Shupe. This is her newest release. It came out last year. I've talked about this a lot. I love this book so freaking much. I think it is one of the best new historicals that I have read in a very long time. It is seductive, it is sensual, it is so beautifully romantic. There are some absolutely to die for slow, like, kissing scenes in here instead of just like getting right to the hot and heavy part right away. I think it's just fabulous. It's about our heroine, Alice, who is desperate to get out from the clutches of her mother. Like, she needs to get married so she can break away from her mother, who's super abusive to her. And so she approaches our hero Kit, who is known as a ladies' man and a rake, and she wants him to teach her how to appeal to a man and hopefully land a husband. And so they end up having these seduction lessons, and it's a thing of beauty. I love this book so much. This book also incorporates cooking a lot, which was really fun because Alice wants to be a cook, and this is set in the Gilded Age in America, and at that time, women did not cook, especially ladies did not cook, so it was absolutely beautiful. I love this book so much, and I think this is one of the best Rake Wallflower romances that I've ever read. Now, in that vein, when I talked about that book so much in December, which is when I read it, I had, or maybe November, I had an arc of that book. I read it and I had some people when it came out that said, do you know of any other books that have like seduction lessons? And of course I thought of one of my favorite historicals of all time that does this trope really, really well, which also features a rake and a wallflower, and it is One Good Earl Deserves a Lover by Sarah MacLean. I love this book so much. I think this is one of my favorite Sarah MacLean books. It is so beautiful and so fun and steamy. There is a chair scene in here. It lives right in my head, rent-free, all the time. I think it's one of the most seductive scenes that Sarah MacLean has ever written. It's absolutely beautiful. This is about Pippa, who is very much a wallflower. She's an intellectual. She really struggles with knowing how to interact with people. She is extremely smart, except for when it comes to relationships and things like that. She knows Cross, who is part owner of the Fallen Angel, which is a gambling hell at this time. She knows that he is basically the rake to win all rakes. Like, he is the rake's rake. He is a ladies' man. He is expert in the bedroom. And the twist here is that Pippa doesn't necessarily want to find a husband because she actually is almost about to be engaged and married, but she's worried she's going to end up in a very dry, non-passionate relationship. And so what Pippa wants is to experience all of the beauties of the flesh that she feels will be denied to her, so she wants to have a very passionate experience with Cross. Now, Cross holds out for quite a while, and he feels like he's not good enough for her. He is not ready to debauch her in that way. And so, like, his restraint, when she so clearly appeals to him, like, there's something about her that really appeals to him, that he finds very attractive and very compelling, and he just is sort of bowled over by her. So his restraint and trying to resist when she is so much offering it to him, and she does things that she doesn't perceive to be seductive, but he does, and it's so beautiful. I love this book so much. So if you like that seduction lesson trope and you haven't read either of these, put those on your list. Beautiful Rake Wallflower romances. Okay, another book that I have is The Duke Who Didnt by Courtney Milan. This is one of my favorite historical romances. I feel like this is also one that is pretty low angst, whereas I feel like the other two could be a little bit higher angst, especially the Sarah MacLean. This one is pretty low angst, but it is just so completely beautiful. And Jeremy, our hero, who is a Chinese immigrant, and he is actually the Duke of the land where everyone is living at that time. But he doesn't want anyone to know that he is the Duke, so he sort of acts like he's not the Duke, so he doesn't, like, give up the jig, you know what I mean? So him and Chloe have been friends since childhood, and he just has fallen in love with her. They both have feelings for each other, but like dummies, they never act on it. And so he ends up leaving. Chloe comes back when she needs his help with getting ready for this fair that is around town where she's hopefully going to get her father's famous Asian sauce out and help them make money and make a living. He comes back and under the guise of, Chloe, will you help me find a wife? I really need to find a wife. But his plan is to have her make a list because she's very like type A, organizational, likes to make lists. And he thinks if I have her make a list of all of the qualities that I want in a wife, but I make sure that they're qualities that she'll have to realize that I want her for a wife, right? Like, it's just, honestly, it sounds a little bit bonkers, but it's so adorably realistic and fun because, like, just like, why would you think that would be a good idea, my dude, you know? But they go along with it. It's truly so beautiful. And their first night of passion, they're both virgins, was one of the most beautiful and realistic experiences that I'd ever read. And I thought it was honestly just perfection. I really love this book. Jeremy is a cinnamon roll and he's just a wonderful hero. And I just adored their relationship. Okay, another book that I want to mention is The Good Girl's Guide to Rakes by Ava Leigh. This is her new release. This just released on February 22nd. It's the start of a new series. So if you haven't read Ava Leigh, this is the perfect book to jump in on and get a taste for her style. I really love her romances. I think she does an excellent job of creating really beautifully well drawn out characters and scenarios that aren't the typical thing that you see in historical romances, and this one is no different. So this series follows three men who are really close friends, sort of a found family aspect, and this book follows Kieran, who is definitely a rake. Like, he's a rake for sure. He goes to all these salacious halls at night and gambling dens, and he just lives that good life of having wealthy parents and being able to take advantage of that. Some circumstances happen with his friend Dom where Kieran's parents are realizing that, look, Kieran needs to straighten up. He's really not doing the thing we want him to do. He's falling into vice, and if we don't put a stop to this, he's never going to get married and our name will be ruined. So they say that if you do not find a respectable bride by the end of the season, you're completely cut off. So Kieran is terrified of that. He doesn't want to be cut off, and so he approaches his best friend's sister, Celeste, who is a very respectable lady, and asks for her help in finding a respectable bride and sort of repairing his tarnished reputation. When she hears this, she is intrigued because she has definitely sort of been forced into this role where she has to be a perfect lady, she has to have decorum at all times, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to experience life to the fullest. So she says, Kieran, I will do this for you if you show me the dark underside of London. So they proceed into a bargain like that, and of course they fall in love. This book was very, very fun. It was beautifully steamy. The connection between these characters was so beautiful, and I felt like it was very palpable from the first time that they met. I enjoyed this book so much, and it is a perfect rake romance. Okay, now this book is actually the first book that I read by Mary Bellog. It's called The Gilded Web. Mary has such a different writing style than what you typically find in historicals. She writes her stories are a little bit more slow. They are oftentimes a little more quiet, and nothing really is moving the plot forward at a fast pace, you know? So if you really love character-driven stories and slow building stories with beautiful writing, beautiful, like, lines, and really achingly romantic moments that feel very realistic, I would highly recommend Mary Bellog. This book took me a while to really get invested in. I wasn't prepared for her writing style. It did go a little bit slow for me, but once I was invested, I absolutely loved this book, and I just thought it was a thing of beauty, and it was unlike anything I had read before. So this book follows Alexandria. She is definitely a wallflower, and she's out walking one night when she finds herself kidnapped and taken where she believes she's going to be ravished, and bad things are going to happen to her. She ends up waking up in the Earl's home, and she sees him, and there is a very complicated plot on why she was kidnapped and brought there, but the gist of it is that she's ruined, and so the Earl then decides that he has to marry her. So she is a wallflower, you know, she did not plan on marrying. She comes from parents who aren't really very wonderful to her, and watching her really, like, she is the type of heroine that has a spine of steel, and she is not going to get walked all over by men. She has this really beautiful, quiet strength about her, and Edmund is so drawn to that, the Earl. And he really sort of wants to have a relationship with her, but he struggles with that too. So I felt like this was just a really beautiful representation of two people thrown together, literally, and trying to make the best of it and falling deeply in love. I adored this book. I thought it was perfection. I mean, maybe not perfection. It is a little slow moving, but like the emotions and the characters, it was fabulous. So if you really want something to like sink your teeth into, to savor, I would highly recommend this book because it was beautiful. Okay, the next book that I have is Love is a Rogue by Lenora Bell. This is a very fun book. I really enjoyed it. It's also something that has a different plot than what you typically find. Our heroine Beatrice wants to be an entomologist. She is part of this group of women who are Wallflowers, and she is only interested in compiling her etymology dictionary, but she ends up having to supervise the building or improvements of her brother's house. The hero is the carpenter who is hired to come in and build and repair the house, and they end up having what starts off as a friendship and then slowly develops into something that is really beautiful and passionate. This is another book that is very low angst. It's very fun. It's a very easy, quick, fun, enjoyable read. If you're looking for something that you just want, like a pick-me-up, something happy, I would highly recommend this because it was just beautiful and very, very fun. And the combination of her as a wallflower and being very like book smart and very much like a bit of a science nerd, and him being very brawny and a carpenter, like it's not something that you see very often, and it was just really, really fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. Okay, the next book that I have to recommend is Marrying Winterbourne. You knew I had to have some Lisa Kleypas in here. Honestly, I feel like you could put a number of Lisa Kleypas books in here, but I picked this one specifically because Rhys Winterbourne is one of the most famous Rakes that Lisa has written, and I feel like his story in here, the way that he sort of moves from being very stern and cold to really falling in love with the heroine, was just absolutely beautiful. And I think that if you want to get the full impact of his character arc, I would recommend that you read Cold Hearted Rake, because his story and the heroine's story take up a big portion of that book. But again, you don't have to. You could jump in on this one. But if you want like really excellent redemption arc for him, I would recommend reading Cold Hearted Rake too. But the thing that I really loved about this is the way that we see, and this is something that Lisa Kleypas does so well, we see Winterbourne really be just all about like the physical aspects of women. Like he has no appeal for women other than just what their bodies can do for him, you know? And so but he starts to have some very tender feelings for the heroine, and watching those grow and develop and become so solid for him was just a powerfully beautiful reading experience, and I freaking adored it. This book was fantastic, and, you know, he is the stern peppermint daddy for a reason. It's a good time. Okay, the next book that I have to recommend is The Devil of Downtown by Joanna Shupe. Joanna Shupe writes, oh, I have two of her books on here. Look at that. I have two Joanna Shupes. I really do enjoy her books. Not all of them are my favorites, but I loved the hero in here. He is definitely a bit of a rake, and she is definitely a wallflower. Even though this is set in America in the Gilded Age, I loved their romance. The heroine is part of a wealthy family. She is in a group of sisters that the Uptown Girls are all about, and she makes it a point to do good. Like, she's really called a do-gooder in here. So she goes and finds maybe like unfortunate women and children whose husbands or fathers have abandoned them and are in really dire situations, and she tries to help them. So she ends up finding a case with a woman who is in desperate need, and she knows that she doesn't have the power alone to help her. So she goes to find Jack to get his help to bring back the husband and father who left this poor woman, because she knows he has the power to do that. And they sort of end up in this relationship where they are working, and she's trying to get him to be good, and he's trying to fight it, but at the same time can't deny his appeal towards her. He is basically the kingpin of crime in New York at that time, and he's a very powerful man who can have any woman he wants, and he's so completely drawn to this woman who is not the picture of beauty, who is not this sensual goddess, but he cannot stop thinking about her, and he makes some very big changes in his life because of her, and I just feel like their romance was so beautiful. And this hero is one of the best heroes I have ever read in historical romance. I think he's fantastic, so really enjoyed this one too. Okay, and now, I don't know that this video would be complete if I did not include a Wallflowers book from Lisa Kleypas. I decided to go with It Happened One Autumn, which does feature a rake and a wallflower. This is book 3 in her Wallflower series, which again, if you want the full character background, you should probably read them in order, but I do feel like you could read this book out of order because Lillian and Marcus's story is so completely and utterly compelling. Lillian is basically an American heiress, and her family have come to London to find her and her sister like dukes or somebody very important in aristocracy to marry because they have a lot of money. But of course, you know that the people in England, especially the aristocracy, they kind of frown upon new money, especially Americans, so they're having a bit of a rough time finding matches for their daughters. And Lillian is so fiery. She is just this passionate woman who is not going to just shut up and sit there. Like, she is going to take people down if she feels like they are in any way doing any injustice towards her. She is the most fiery, passionate heroine, one of them that I've ever read, and I adore her so much. And she clashes with Marcus very, very much, who we know from way back in Again the Magic. But they have this, it's the type of thing where like they are antagonists and they don't really like each other, and every time they run into each other they're like having fighting words and stuff, but at the same time they're like giving each other heated glances, and like there's so much passion and chemistry between them. It's so freaking beautiful. They of course end up falling in love. I adored this book. This whole series is wonderful, but this one is my favorite in the series. I think they're fantastic. Okay, and the last book that I have to recommend is The Truth About Cads and Dukes by Elisa Braden. This is book 2 in her Rescued from Ruin series. This is an independent historical romance author. You can also read this one out of order if you want to. Like a lot of these historical romances, they're in series. You can definitely read them out of order. But you may be missing a little bit of backstory in the characters' lives and things like that. But in this book, we have, again, a rake and a wallflower. We have the brother who is the head of the family. This first 3 books in this series follow him, his sister, and his younger brother, who is a bit of a wastrel, has gotten into some really bad things, and some things that he's made some choices and decisions that have affected the lives of others that really are kind of awful. His redemption arc is in book 3. It's wonderful. But in this book, we have the oldest brother who is the head of the family, and he takes his responsibility for leading that family very seriously. Like, he loves that family and he wants to do what's right by them. So our heroine Jane ends up sort of falling victim to the younger brother Colin's wiles, and he tries to get her to do something. She agrees to it. She has glasses. She's not stereotypically beautiful. She's a plus-size heroine. And she is sort of a wallflower in that way of you don't expect her to be such a powerful presence as she grows to be in this book, and that was just so beautiful. But she ends up falling victim to Colin and ends up basically ruined, and so our hero, the head of the family, Jonathan, comes to the rescue and they marry. And he is very, very positive that he is not going to love her, that he is not going to have any of course, right? Like, they all are like that. But he really feels like he can't have any type of a relationship with her, but he's going to do the right thing and he's not going to fall in love, but he does. And the thing that I really, really loved about this is how he was so physically aware of her from the very beginning. Like, he finds her attractive from the very beginning, and that attraction just grows and grows and grows alongside his feelings for her. And she is such a beautifully strong heroine who wants to find love for herself, but tries to do the right thing. And this book was just delightful, and I enjoyed it so much. And this whole series is fabulous. This one was a great rake wallflower romance. All right, there we have it. Those are my 10 recommendations for my favorite rake and wallflower romances. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Please feel free to leave me any type of a flower or garden implement like a rake, if there is one, if you want to. And I'll see y'all in my next video.